Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Daf Yomi. So this channel focuses on the depths of the Talmud, one daf at a time, with clarity, relevance, and inspiration, hopefully. Today we're diving into Masechet Daf 76a, part of the Masechet tractate Menachot, which deals with the intricate laws of the mincha offering, the grain-based sacrifice brought in the base of Mikdash. Whether you're a daily daf learner or just curious about Torah and tradition, this video will help you understand the essential points of this daf in just a few minutes. So just a summary. So this was generated on, I'm going to use ChatGPT for it. On daf 76a, the Gemara continues discussing the laws of the Menachot, the meal offering, with specific attention to 1. Combining measures of oil. The Gemara debates whether multiple loaves or portions of a mincha offering can share a measure of oil, or whether each unit must have its own designated measure. This connects to the Torah's requirement for oil to be applied to certain offerings like minchas chavitin or minchas mechavat. Number 2, intent and application. There is a discussion on the role of intent, whether the intended designation of the oil matters in cases where it was actually used on a different offering. This brings up the halachic category of machshava, intent, and how it affects validity. Number 3, the general principle of kol hara'oi. The daf revisits the Talmudic principle. Kol hara'oi bilo enu me'achev es habilo. Anything that is fit to be mixed, even if it isn't actually mixed, the lack of mixing doesn't invalidate it. This has broad implications in sacrificial law and reflects the deeper principle. What matters is whether something is theoretically possible, even if it's not performed in practice. Cases in the Mishnah. Specific cases are analyzed, such as a mincha where oil wasn't added properly, or where it became invalid due to improper action, highlighting halachic consequences of the procedural missteps. So the key takeaways of halachic intent machshava can affect the validity of a korban, even if technical details like oil, application. The principle of fit for mixing teaches that halachic actions doesn't always need to occur if the object was capable of receiving them. There's a balance between component law, between strict procedure and conceptual eligibility. So let's dive straight into the actual material. It starts off with the Mishnah. All the meal offerings require rubbing 300 times. So what does that mean? Require rubbing 300 times and striking 500 times. All the wheat kernels of meal offerings must be rubbed 300 times and struck 500 times in order to peel them. It is performed in the following manner. He rubs once and strikes twice, then rubs twice and strikes 3 times, so that he rubs 3 times and strikes 5 times. This procedure is repeated 100 times, yielding a total of 300 rubbings and 500 strikes, so that the kernels are peeled very well. This is in accordance with the ruling of the Mishnah and the Baraita cited in the Gemara. That's from Sefer Avodah Hilchot Yisurim Mizbeach 7.5. Shiva, rubbing. The commentary suggests various interpretations of the action described in the Mishnah. Some explain it involves rubbing the palm of one's hand back and forth over the kernels, with Rashi. Alternatively, this may be accomplished by rubbing the kernels between 2 hands, which manuscript, or by husking the kernels while they're inside the vessel, inside the utensil, using one's palm, being a Goshen Mor Hagola. All the meal offerings require rubbing 300 times. This is explained in Rashi manuscript. In the opinion of the first Tana, who says that one rubs the kernels, the rubbing makes it show that the wheat kernels fall off more easily. As the Fat Emes explains, the rubbing softens the shells, they will fall off when the kernels are ground. In the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, who explains that one rubs the dough, the rubbing yields a superior dough. The Rambam offers a third explanation. The rubbing removes the dirt and refuse from the kernels. Rambam commentary on the Mishnah. Striking. Be'ita. Although the term be'ita normally denotes kicking, here the Mishnah describes an action performed with the hand in which the grain is beaten in order to separate the husk from the kernels. According to Rashi, the word be'ita refers to striking the wheat with a closed fist in the manner of the kneaders. Alternatively, it means striking the grain with the base of one's hand. On the contrary, suggests the threshing process described in the Mishnah does in fact include treading on the grain with one's feet in the manuscript. With one's fist or palm, rubbing and striking are performed on the wheat kernels to remove the husks prior to grinding them into flour. Rabbi Yossi says they are performed on the dough to ensure a smooth product. All the meal offerings come as 10 loaves or 10 wafers. With regard to all the meal offerings, when they are baked, each tenth of an eighth of flour is used for 10 loaves. This is a halacha concerning all the variety of loaves, i.e., unleavened bread, standard unleavened loaves, unleavened wafers, and unleavened boiled loaves, in accordance with the Mishnah. 9:17 to 18, 13, 10, from each 1/10 of an eighth of flour, except for the showbread and the griddle cake offering of the high priest, which come as 12 loaves or wafers. The Torah states that there must be 12 loaves of the showbread in the temple, of which each loaf is made of 2/10 of an eighth of flour. This is according to the opinion of the first 10 of Ram Sefer Timidim and Misofim 5:2. This is a statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says they all come as 12 loaves except for the 4 types of loaves that accompany the thanks offering, and the 2 types of loaves that accompany the peace offering of the Nazarite, which come as 10 each. A Tana taught in a Baraita that the rubbing and striking are done in the following manner. He rubs once and strikes twice. He then rubs twice and strikes 3 times. This sequence is repeated 100 times, so that he rubs 300 times and strikes 500 times. Rabbi Yirmiyah proves that. Rabbi Yirmiyah learned Torah in his native Babylonia in his youth, but was not known there as a great scholar. When he later came to Eretz Yisrael and studied under the great sages of the generation, Rabbi Yochanan's students, Rabbi Zeim and Rabbi Bahu, he became one of the most distinguished Amoraim of Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yirmiyah had a special dialectic method of acuity, and would pose provocative questions to teachers and colleagues. Since these questions gave the impression that Rabbi Yirmiyah was seeking to undermine the accepted rules of halachic dialectic, he was criticized and removed from the study for a brief period. His sharp manner of expression led him to occasionally call Babylonian sages by the monkey foolish Babylonians. Nevertheless, it should be noted that these sages received criticism humbly. Rabbi Yirmiyah is considered one of the greatest sages of Eretz Yisrael, and had a greater number of his statements are cited in both the Babylonian Talmud and Jewish Talmud, so esteemed, and when they cited the opinion of Babylonia, they would employ a general reference, they say, in the West, meaning Eretz Yisrael, raised a dilemma with regard to the rubbing. Is the rubbing on the hand back and forth over the surface of the item considered one rubbing, or is perhaps rubbing back and forth considered 2 distinct rubbings? When one rubs the wheat kernels to peel them in preparation of the meal offerings, he must consider the back and forth motion over the surface of the kernel as a single rub. Because Rabbi Yirmiyah's question concerning this procedure is unresolved in the Gemara, it is an instance in which the stringent possibility is adopted. On Sefer 7:5. What is the correct count? The Gemara states that the Mishnah teaches rubbing and striking are performed on the wheat kernels. Rabbi Yossi says they performed on the dough. The Gemara comments, the dilemma was raised before the stages. Does Rabbi Yossi mean that these actions are performed on the dough, not on the wheat kernels? Perhaps he means that they are performed not only on the kernels, but also on the dough. The Gemara suggests, come to have resolution as taught in the Baraita. Rubbing and striking are performed on the wheat kernels. Rabbi Yossi says rubbing and striking are performed on the dough. The Mishnah teaches that, according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, all of the meal offerings come as 10 loaves or wafers, except for the showbread and the griddle cake offering of the high priest, which come as 12 loaves or wafers. One examines the sources for these exceptions. Go to the showbread, this is written explicitly of it. And you shall take fine flour and bake 12 cakes of it, Leviticus 24:5. And that the griddle cake of the high priest is also offered as 12 units, is derived from a verbal analogy. A verbal analogy gives a Shavuot. This is a fundamental Talmudic principle of biblical interpretation, appearing in all standard lists of exegetical principles. If the same word or phrase appears in 2 places in the Torah, and a certain halacha is explicitly stated in one of those places, one may find the basis of a verbal analogy that the same applies in the other case as well. Consequently, referring to a verbal identity rather than on conceptual similarity. For example, the Torah states concerning those convicted of certain types of sorcery, shall be put to death, they shall stone them with stones, their blood shall be upon them. That's 20:27. This verse employs the expression that blood shall be upon them. When speaking of death by stoning, the Talmud infers by verbal analogy. In all cases where the expression is used, the punishment is capital punishment by stoning. Generally, inference is drawn through verbal analogy only if the same word or phrase appears in both of the verses being compared. Although verbal analogies are occasionally drawn even if the terms are not identical, if the meanings are similar. Of the word obligation written in the content of the verse discussed in the Showbread. With regard to the griddle cake offering, the verse states, and the anointed priest shall offer it. Is an obligation forever, Leviticus 6:15. And the verse states regard to 12 loaves of the Showbread, which should be for Aaron and his sons, a perpetual obligation, Leviticus 24:9. The Gemara asks, according to Rabbi Yehuda, who states in the Mishnah with regard to all the meal offerings that come as 10 loaves or 10 wafers, from where do we derive this halacha? The Gemara answers that he derives it from the loaves of the thanks offering. Just as there are 10 loaves, so to here with regard to the other meal offerings there are 10 loaves. The Gemara challenges, but let him derive from the Showbread, just as there are 12 loaves, so to here the other meal offerings there must be 12. The Gemara explains the stands to reason Rabbi Yehuda should derive the halacha of the other meal offerings and the loaves of the thanks offering, as the other meal offerings resemble the loaves of the thanks offering and differ from the Showbread in several respects. They are offered by an individual, not by the public. They are bought by one who donates and not as obligatory offerings. Oil is used in the preparation. They are disqualified when left overnight, whereas by contrast, the right of the Showbread demands they be left on the table for 8 days. They are not bought on Sabbath, unlike the Showbread, whose rite is performed on the Sabbath. And they are not bought in a state of impurity, unlike the Showbread, which is bought in even in a state of impurity. The Gemara responds, on the contrary, Rabbi Yehuda should derive the halacha of the other meal offerings from the Showbread, as they resemble the Showbread in several respects. They are considered property of the most sacred order, whereas loaves of the thanks offering are of lesser sanctity, and they are bought with frankincense, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering are not. They are bought only as unleavened bread, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering included some leavened bread, and each is brought as an offering by itself, where the loaves of the thanks offering are brought together with an animal sacrifice. The Gemara explains these analogies between other meal offerings and the loaves of the thanks offering are more numerous than the analogies between other meal offerings and the Showbread. Therefore, the halacha of other meal offerings is derived from the loaves of the thanks offering. The Gemara posited previously, according to Rabbi Yehuda, a Rabbi teaches that, like the Showbread, the griddle cake offering of the high priest is brought as 12 units. The Gemara asks, and every whole that matter learned through a verbal analogy may subsequently teach as a paradigm. Let us derive the halacha of the other meal offering from the griddle cake offering of the high priest. Just as there the meal offering comprises 12 units, so to here other meal offerings consist of 12 units. The Gemara responds, it stands to reason that Rabbi Yehuda should derive the halacha from the halacha of the loaves of the thanks offering, as the other meal offerings resemble the loaves of the thanks offering and differ from the griddle cake offering in several respects. They are bought by an ordinary person, not by the high priest. They are bought by one who donates and not as obligatory offerings, and they are only bought whole, while the high priest griddle cake is bought in halves, half in the morning and half in the afternoon. In addition, they are disqualified as pickle, i.e. when they are sacrificed with the intent to be consumed after their appointed time. Unlike the griddle cake offering, which is not eaten at all, they are not bought on the Sabbath, unlike the griddle cake offering, and they are not bought in a state of rich impurity, whereas the griddle cake offering is bought by the high priest even while impure. The Gemara challenges, on the contrary, Rabbi Yehuda should have derived the halacha of the other meal offering from the high priest griddle cake offering, as the other meal offerings resemble the griddle cake offering in several respects. They both contain 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour, and isaron, 1/10 of an ephah. An ephah is a measure of dry volume. Estimates of the modern equivalent of an ephah range from 24.5 liters to 43.3 liters of fine flour, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering contain several tenths of an ephah. They are consecrated when placed in a service vessel, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering are consecrated when the thanks offering is slaughtered. They are consecrated property of the most sacred order, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering are of lesser sanctity, and they are brought with frankincense, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering are not. In addition, they are brought only of unleavened bread. The loaves of the thanks offering includes some leavened bread, and each is brought as an offering itself, whereas the loaves of the thanks offering are brought together with an animal sacrifice. Part of their right is bringing them near the southwest corner of the altar, unlike the loaves of the thanks offering, and all parts or all of them are placed on the sides of the altar, unlike the loaves of the thanks offering. The Gemara comments, and indeed these similarities between other meal offerings and griddle cakes are more numerous than the similarity between other meal offerings and the loaves of the thanks offering. Therefore it seems more appropriate to derive the number of loaves from the griddle cake offering. The Gemara answers, nevertheless, Rabbi Shimon prefers to learn the halacha of the other meal offerings, which are bought by an ordinary person, from the loaves of the thanks offering, which are bought by an ordinary person. The Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Meir says, they all come as 12 loaves. The Gemara explains, what does he hold? If he holds that a matter learned through Rebbe is subsequently used to teach as a paradigm, he derives the number of loaves in other meal offerings from the high priest griddle cake offering, which was itself derived from a Rebbe, as these similarities between other meal offerings and the griddle cake offering enumerated are more numerous. And if he holds that a matter learned through a verbal analogy is not subsequently used as a paradigm, then he derives the number of loaves in other meal offerings from the 12 loaves of the Showbread. This is because Rabbi Meir prefers to derive the status of the other meal offerings, which are consecrated property of the highest order, from the Showbread, which is also consecrated property of the highest order, in contrast to the loaves of the thanks offering, which are of lesser sanctity. The Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Meir says, they all come as 12 loaves except for the loaves of the thanks offering and the loaves that accompany the guilt offering of Nazarite Shim, which come as 10 each. And while explains the exception with regard to the loaves of the thanks offering, it is written explicitly that these loaves are brought in units of 10, based on the verbal analogy with regard to the thanks offering, and the verse states, and of it he shall present one out of each offering for a gift, to him, the Lord, Leviticus 7:14, and with regard to the room of the tithe, it states, and he shall set apart of it a gift to room for the Lord, a tithe of a tithe, Numbers 18:26. Just as the room of the tithe consists of one portion of 10, so too the loaves of the thanks offering are brought in units of 10, see 77b. That 10 loaves accompanying the guilt offering of Nazarite Ship is derived from a verse. As the Master says, the verse describing the thanks offering states, with cakes of leavened bread he shall present his offering with the sacrifice of his peace offerings for thanksgiving, Leviticus 7:13, and the term is peace offerings should to include the loaves of the peace offering of the Nazarite, just as each of the 4 varieties of loaves accompanying the thanks offering are brought in units of 10 loaves. So too the peace offering of the Nazarite comprises 10 loaves. The loaves of the thanks offering consists of 10 of each of the following types: leavened loaves, unleavened loaf wafers, standard unleavened loaves, and unleavened loaves made from flour mixed with water and oil. With regard to these loaves, Rav Tovi Bar Kisner says that Shmuel says, in the case of loaves of the thanks offering, that one baked as only 4 loaves. If the loaves of the thanks offering were baked as 4 loaves, one fulfills the obligation. Although the Torah states that there are to be 40 loaves, this is only the optimal way to fulfill the mitzvah. Nevertheless, if he is bringing only 4 loaves, he must separate tumor from each loaf when it is in the form of dough. This tumor must not be separated in the form of sliced loaves. This is according to the ruling of Shmuel. 9:22. One of each of the 4 types, where each loaf is the size of 10 loaves, he fulfills the obligation. The Gemara asks, but do we not require 40 loaves? The Gemara answers, 40 loaves are bought in order to fulfill the mitzvah in the optimal fashion, but he has nevertheless fulfilled the obligation with 4 loaves, 1 of each type. The Gemara challenges, but an individual who brings the loaves as an offering is required to separate tumor from them by designating 1 loaf of each type to be given to the priest, which cannot be done where only 1 loaf of each type exists. And if you would say that he may separate a 10th piece from each and every loaf, that is difficult. Does the Mishnah state, and of it he shall present 1 out of each offering for a gift to Ruma to the Lord, who teaches that he may not take sliced bread, but rather a whole loaf. The man says this is a case where he separated it while kneading. According to Rashi, the portion to be given to the priest was separated while the loaves were still dough. The dough was subsequently shaped into the whole loaves, so that the separation did not cause the offered loaves to be sliced. He explained that the dough was kneaded into 10 sets of 10 loaves, at which point 1 of each set was separated. He then combined the remaining 9 loaves of each type into 1 large loaf. Rosh and Aran and Adam 12b. That he it is not considered separating a slice. The Gemara raises an objection to the opinion of Shimon from a Baraita. All the meal offerings will, one, increase the measure of the loaves. Rashi offers two possible explanations. According to the first, the increase and decrease described relate to the respective sizes of the loaves. Therefore, if one uses the same amount of dough to form 7 or 8 loaves instead of 10 loaves, each one will be increased in size. Similarly, if one uses the dough for more than 10 loaves, each one will be decreased in size. According to the explanation, the Baraita refers to the quantity of loaves. Therefore, the case where he increased the measure refers to one making more than 10 loaves, or increasing it refers to making fewer than 10 loaves. When one bakes the 4 varieties of baked meal offerings, each 1/10 of an eighth is meant to be used for 10 loaves of initial. Nevertheless, if more or fewer loaves are baked, the offering remains fit in accordance with the Baraita. From Sefer Roni Hechad Maser Korbanot 13:10. See the kids of Mishnah and Lechem Mishnah there. The measure of the loaves are nevertheless fit, except for the 12 loaves of the Showbread and 12 loaves of the high priest credo cake offering, and the 10 loaves of each variety for the thanks offering, and 10 loaves that accompany the guilt offering of Nazarite sheep. Evidently, no fewer than 40 loaves are fit for the thanks offering, according to the statement of Shimon. So, just a quick summary of what we covered. We explored how the oil is measured and applied in Menachot offerings. Learn how halacha in 10 status sacrifice. Thank you for listening, and if you want to leave a like, you can subscribe. Feel free to share to anyone who might be interested. And until next time, shkoyach and chazak baruch, and keep up the learning. All the best. Bye.